everybody. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in to the PHNX Coyotes podcast, brought to you by the one and only DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's top-rated sportsbook app. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review. I'm Leah Merrill here with Steve Peters and Craig Morgan as always, but today we are very excited to be joined by a special guest, Arizona Coyotes General Manager Bill Armstrong. Bill, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's quite a setup. I'm very, very impressed. We got a beer fridge, foosball over there. I feel very relaxed. So it's really a good setup. I'm very impressed.
Is the chair big enough to hold you, buddy?
Is that a weight comment or is that a size comment? I'm not sure, but I'm just going to go with it's a size comment.
Oh my goodness.
Well, we're obviously here to talk about a lot of different topics. You've been talking a lot about these already all season, but let's roll through a lot of different topics and let's start with the team. Obviously, they've been losing a lot of games. They won last night, of course, against Vegas, but it's been a tough run. They've lost 11 of the past 13. Clearly, you're in rebuild mode, Bill, with a desire to acquire assets, draft as high and as often as possible.
Yeah.
How do you balance that need with trying to stay competitive, trying to keep the players both engaged and in a positive mindset?
It is a tough thing because there's a lot of different things coming at you. You feel for the fans, number one. You feel for the players, and also internally the coaching staff and the morale that happens when you go through it. It's whenever you're losing that amount of games, it takes its toll on everybody. We try to really, wake up in the morning, go to the rink and worry about process. How do we get better? And those are the things that it's the small victories that you have in there, especially with the young players or the hat trick by Keller last night. You really dig into, but it takes its toll. There's no question. It's a hard thing to go through. I'd like to thank our fan base. I mean, you go to the Mullet last night. Our fans are unbelievable. They cheer. The noise in there. It's great. So they've been patient. I think they've seen some signs that kind of get them excited when they see the Guenther score the first goal of the game and some of the prospects at the World Juniors. They can see what's coming.
Yeah, we're going to go around the horn a little bit here, but let's start by asking you sort of about groups of players.
Yeah.
And maybe the current slump colors your view of this a little bit, but let's start with the middle core. Clayton Keller obviously had the hat trick. Yeah. What have you seen from guys like Kells, Nick Schmaltz, Lawson Krause, Christian Fisher? Maybe even we throw Jakob Chychrun in that mix.
Yeah. Really good things. They've embraced it. They've come to the rink every day and really put their hard hat on. And Kells is probably the leader of that. The way he came back from his injury was impressive. I mean, he was doing yoga and Pilates. And I mean, it's just, he didn't take a moment off in the summer, and there he hit the ground running and he hasn't stopped. And I still think he's getting better. So that middle group has really had a good impact for us. They've been driving, and Chick has been very impressive. He's come in, he's played some great hockey, he's played hard hockey, and took a step forward, and I really like that, from him. Smoltzy got off to a little bit of a slow start, but he's really rebounded. I'd say his last 5 games are probably his best. He's really, an elite offensive player, and someone that has put some more time into the training in the summer. So, like I said before, with those guys, there's a lot of small victories that happen that you see, and they kind of drive our team, especially our offense.
It's one of the things when we talked about Clayton Keller, and we've talked about him here a lot and how he's evolved as a player. And actually, it came up in a question last night after his second hat trick of the year is, what's changed? Since you've been the general manager and watched his progression over the last 2.5 seasons, what has changed and what has made Clayton Keller a better player over the last 2.5 years?
Well, number one, I think our coach has done a great job. I think there's a trust factor between him and Kells, and that's given Kells a lot of confidence. Bear uses him, puts him in every situation possible. And I think Kells has responded to that and taken on that extra ice time. I also think there's a maturity of a young man coming into the NHL where they come in and they're like, oh my God, I'm in the NHL. It's so exciting. Yeah. And then the following few years, it's all about, okay, it's a grind now. We're playing this team. It's a different type of feel. It takes a while to mature to get through that and then get on the other side of that where you can be a consistent player. I think money also changes people, just getting adapted to making that type of money and really getting your priorities in life straight. Like, what is it that drives me as a human being? And most times it comes back to, I don't give a crap. You can only drive one car. at a time, and you can only sleep in one bed at a time. So it comes back to let's be a good hockey player. Let's dig into being a better hockey player, and how do I do that? And I think that's a maturity that happens in the NHL with the young players, and he's gone through that process and come out the backside of that a stronger, more determined player. At the end of the day with Kels, he is a competitor. If you play him in checkers or chess or golf, he wants to win. He's a competitor, and so I think he's done a great job of driving our team.
Well, we want to ask you about another group of players who are the young prospects currently on this roster. So players like J.J. Mosier, Barrett Hayton, Dylan Guenther, Jack McBain, and Matthias Maccelli, if you can just speak to those guys a little bit.
Well, I think, and this goes back to my days kind of growing up in the St. Louis organization. We had drafted all these really good young players, the Backuses, the Oshis, the Peter Angelos, the Eric Johnsons of the world. And everyone said, oh, you guys are going to make playoffs this year. We weren't even close, and you go like up and down, up and down. And on some nights, TJ Oshie was pulling the fans out of their seats, when Backus was hammering goals and Perron was scoring. But we could never really get it together because the consistency wasn't enough. And that's what happens with our young players. As you see the J.J. Mosers and the Guenthers, they have big nights. And Maccelli has seen his growth from one year to the next, and he's slowly becoming consistent. So there's a process that you have to allow them to develop. And you're trying to put as much, I guess, I wouldn't use the word pressure, but trying to get them through what they're going through and find the consistency of being a great player in your lineup every night. That's the hardest thing with the young players. And when you have one young player on the ice, he makes one mistake, but you have 10 of them, you have 10 mistakes every night. So there is a patience level. And I think that's what also Barry, he does a great job because he's used to developing kids from junior where he's had to put those young players in the lineup and depend on them. And he's done a great job putting those young guys in the lineup and getting them to play better. And I think, he's also a coach, where it's determined how much you play by how good you play. And I think they respect that about him, that they know when you see the kid plays 9 minutes of ice, he didn't play very well. But on his good nights, he's playing upwards over 15 minutes. And I think that's what Bear does a good job. And I think that's what they respond to. And it's a respect level. They know, hey, I'm going tonight. Coach is playing me. So I think our coaching staff's done a good job. And I think the other part of that is those kids have really good character. All of them. They're really good kids and they love hockey.
The other end of the spectrum, the veterans, you brought in a mix this offseason. Nick Bukestad, Josh Brown, Patrick Nemeth, and Troy Stetcher. What have they brought to the lineup this season?
Well, we've had a revolving door with different veterans coming through. A majority of them on bad contracts that we've taken in to acquire assets. We've been fortunate with most of the veterans that we've brought in. They've all brought their different flavor. Nick Bukestad's probably the nicest human being I've ever met in my life. So
where's he from?
Minnesota. He's of course, yeah.
Sure. Right?
I won't encourage him. But and last year we had the lads, and the Beagles, and those guys had won championships, and they had brought that. So I think every year we have our veteran presence that comes through, and each year our young guys and middle guys, for that matter, are all learning from them. And it's really it's a unique flavor that comes through. We've had some really good people, and they it's interesting the effect that an older veteran like that can have on a younger player. And whether it's Lawson Krause texting Dylan Guenther that's at the World Juniors, or it's just, hey, are you okay? It's a rough ride for those young guys going, and the better veterans you have, the better leadership you have can get you through the rebuild with getting something when you're going through the rebuild, and that's the little extras off the ice and teaching them to be pros and eating properly. And that is a huge part of the veteran presence and the guys that you had mentioned and what effect they can have. And so far they've had a really good effect.
And that's one of the things you talk about that, and you've seen it. People familiar with the league, you've seen a team, and I hate to throw them under the bus, but the Edmonton Oilers, who had those high draft picks year after year after year, and without that mix and without the guys pulling the rope and leading the way, you just don't find the right path.
Yeah. Well, it's a great point, and not to damper on any other NHL teams with their picks, but it's like bringing your kids. You bring your kids into the world. You got to raise them right. You got to teach them the right values of what you believe in. And if you skip the process or if you miss something along the way and they're only, for example, worried about points and they forget about the team, it doesn't work out in the end. It has to be team-driven, winning-driven. And you've got to raise your young players in your organization the proper way. There can be a lot of selfishness that's directed at points that happen in the NHL. Guys are just so driven on the points that they forget about the team. We're here to win a championship. From my opening press conference with my little remark about I didn't come to the desert to get a tan. What I really was saying, we came here to win. Like, that's the biggest thing. It's not about the next contract. It's building a winning franchise and trying to win a championship. And that's everybody, from your trainers to your media guy. It's everybody pulling and pushing in the same manner. And it's not easy because, you have to bring your kids up in your organization the right way. And that's
Bill,
hard.
So this brings up a point. Because this organization over the last 20 years, they've been here before.
Yeah.
They've been through rebuilds. We've talked about the 14-15 one with Tocchet. Tippett had one as well. There's been some of these moments.
Yeah.
The relationship between the coaching staff, there is no doubt Andre Tourigny's here to win.
Yeah.
That you watch him on the bench, you see his passion for the game. He's here. The players come to the rink every day to win.
Yeah.
There's also an understanding that the franchise is trying to acquire assets and get through a rebuild. How is the relationship, one, between you and Andre? Is there communication? Because I've seen it. I've seen to the point where Don Maloney and Dave Tippett didn't talk because it was such friction between the relationship of where they were going. So that made going to work difficult. So one, how is that relationship? And two, how do you assess a coach when it can't be about wins and losses?
Yeah.
And how do you look at Andre Tourigny and the job he has done?
They're really good questions. I'll answer the last one first. Is you look at how does the team compete every night? Because some nights you get on the ice and some teams get $96 million on the ice and you got $54 million, and they got 4 lines ready to go with star goaltenders, and so you're comparing apples to oranges. So how do you evaluate the coach? It's the preparation. It's him working on the pregame skate. Are they doing tips? Are they doing face-offs? Are they teaching it? Are we prepared to play on how to beat that team? Are we competitive? Are our guys maxing out in that game how good they can be? Is that the best they can be? Are they prepared? You can tell by the crispness of the passes and the pregame scout on the other team, how it's laid out. Are we doing that? That's how you evaluate. And I think with the relationship with Bear and I are always pretty good. Because I've coached, I'm a little bit sensitive to the coach's feelings after the games. Sometimes Bear's pretty open to talk, so we have some good, tough conversations about this and that. He's not very emotional, He's emotion. He has emotion, but it's very controlled. So some coaches you couldn't have that conversation with. Sometimes it's better to wait to the next day and let everything settle. Because I've coached, I realize you can't go in there and poke and, get too much tough information. It's better the next day to pick up the phone or go for a coffee and say, hey, what do you think about this? Everybody settled down in a little bit. So he does a really good job on his end of processing the game and why we won, why we lost, and we can talk about it. But that's how you keep the relationship open. I think that it's easy as a GM to close the door, and it's easy for a coach to say, I'm not talking to him, and just walk away. But it doesn't solve anything, and especially where we are. We want to be in constant communication about in whether you're hiring a coach with a coach or you're calling a player up. It's a partnership that you're working with them. And you have to have that open conversation. It's not always easy. It's tough conversations for sure.
And the staff a lot of times will be the ears listening to the players' frustrations as they're going through these tough times. How do you get Andre through that same sort of thing? Because as PD just said, Andre wants to win too.
Yeah.
So how do you get him through the low points when he's frustrated with where they are in the process?
Well, when he took the job and we go 0-11 at the start, I looked over at him and I'm like, oh my God, I think he's gonna die. And it's hard because as a coach, you're preaching to your players, do it this way and success will follow. Do this. I'm telling you, this is the right path to go down. And when you don't have success, that's the toughest thing for coaches. It's the hardest thing for them. They got to go inside, put the game plan out to the team, and all of a sudden there's no success. And that's what I think Bear's done a really good job of, is selling the small little successes for our team to the players and getting them to buy in around that.
Before we move on, still tons of stuff to get to. I just want to take a quick break to talk to everybody about the DraftKings Sportsbook app. There's 4 NFL teams remaining, 2 conference championship games coming up, and only a few more shots to win big on the playoffs with the DraftKings Sportsbook app, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. Counting down to Super Bowl 57, new customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app, use code PHNX, and new customers can bet $5 on the conference championship and get $200 in free bets instantly, only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code PHNX. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. And we mentioned the beer fridge off the top.
Yes.
We're looking forward to this Wednesday, just 2 days from now.
Yeah.
We're going to be at Four Peaks doing our shows at Four Peaks all day long. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Join us for last Wednesdays, this Wednesday, January 25th. All of our shows are live and in person throughout the day. Enjoy $3 beer specials and come say hi to us. We're going to be up first at 11 a.m. Enjoy some Four Peaks.
And that's never too early. It is coffee, by the way, that I'm drinking. It is.
Yeah. Sure.
Just saying.
But anyway, so back to talking
Yeah,
about.
we drink a lot on the show, but
But our show's at
long
11 at night. What do you want us to do? Like, it's a beer fridge. Anyway, sorry.
All right, let's get back on track here. Well, Bill's phone's blowing up here, by the way.
It happened all night, all day.
Yeah, especially in your job.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump ahead a little bit. One of the key dates that people are looking at now, and it's fast approaching now, is the March 3rd trade deadline.
Yeah.
And there could be a lot of players on the move if the price is right.
Yeah.
We've heard all the names: Jakob Chychrun, Shane Gostisbehere, Nick Bjugstad, Josh Brown, Nick Ritchie, maybe even guys like Troy Stetcher, Christian Fisher, Karel Vejmelka, who knows?
Jeez.
Where do you stand with all of that, and what is your sense of the market right now?
There's a lot of teams that don't know what they're doing inside the market. They're not sure if they're buyers or sellers. So I think they're keeping their hand in both, and it's probably confusing the market a little bit. For us, we've always taken the approach since I've been here that, if the team's in it, we're going to keep our guys together. Like, if we got a chance. If not, we're going to, obviously move some assets and become a better team down the road. It's one of those things I've been open and try and be honest with the players about. Hopefully it's not too much of a distraction. But it is part of the process that we're going through.
There's that tough gap, I guess, between deciding whether you're still in it or you're not in it, and sometimes it's hard to be realistic, maybe.
Yeah, and I think my first year there was, points where you were thinking, okay, we're still in this. Like we've got a thing. Let's leave the group. And I think it was really good to kind of leave the group together because I had a better understanding at the end of the year what we had to do. So I think some GMs don't have. I know in St. Louis we had the 1 year where we just kind of faltered, and that was it. Boom, before the deadline, we just started moving some guys, and it's probably a little bit of a wake up call to your team. For some teams out there, if they start moving pieces, guys like, hey, I thought we were in it, and then and then you're out. But that's part of the process, and it's not always an easy one to explain to the players because you certainly have to get on the plane with them after you've moved everybody. So it's not always that comfortable.
One of the things, try to take us behind the curtain a little bit. We're not asking for secret inside info. And the people that watch our show, they've made thousands of trades already this year.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
But there's a player we've talked about since last season. It's Jakob Chychrun. So I'm not looking to see what teams and where.
Yeah.
What I'm asking is, how does the process work? Do teams call you? Are you on the phone, or is this overhyped? Or are we just trying to get Jakob Chychrun day to day and just keeping him improving as a hockey player? Like, how does the overall process from a general manager with an asset that large? Yeah. What's the process?
Well, the process is to have transparency between the player and me. That's the first thing that has to you have to take place. Listen, this is a partnership with the players too. You're not going anywhere in the NHL unless you have a good partnership and a good honesty with players. They might not always like what you have to say, but I think it's important. I think with Chick, we've had some good honesty about it. Where I'd like to see his play be, he's responded. He has been there. He trained all summer. He got himself in great shape, along with getting healthy, and he's played well. So he's been a really good asset to have. And there's been openness between myself and his management about where he could move, and if that comes to fruition, then we'll do that. But if not, then he's a Coyote, and we've had a certain ask, and we've stuck by that ask. we're not here, I guess, to be a doormat of the NHL where people are just going to come in and take assets and, us not get what we need to get out on the other side of it. So I like the way that Chick's played. I like the way that the impact that he's had on our club. He's been very positive. So for us, we obviously we listen to teams and we'll go from there.
Is it conceivable that he's here past the deadline, past the draft even?
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Absolutely. Well, it's due to what the NHL needs. It's due to, what teams have injuries, who can fit them in. It's a tricky world out there with the cap. It's like everybody thinks, you do this, you could trade him here. There's, the cap, teams are full.
Yeah.
So it's dollar in, dollar out. It's what you have to take back. And is that, does that work? It's a very complex matter that happens. And you could probably see that with the OEL trade, where how many bodies were moving around, and had a GM call me and says, I don't even understand it yet. I got to put, and we just worked player for player, so at the end of the day, it all worked out even. And so, there's a lot of that going on when you're trying to do deals.
You talked about Chychrun, so you keep communication. Do you ever go out to dinner with him? We talked a lot about his diet. Are you eating the raw liver? Like the raw liver and the beef hearts?
You know about this, right?
Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Is that on the team meal? Like, is Griff getting raw liver?
There's a lot of different diets that go around with the guys, and there's a lot of different, hey, cold tub, hot tub, and all that kind of stuff, and yoga, and I think some of it is just mental. I'm not sure if it all works, but if it's just mentally works for them, then it makes them a better player. I'm all for it. Yeah. But it's just tough enough being a GM with that amount of food around all the time that you just I don't have time to pay attention to their diets. I just got to worry about myself and that.
The NHL, the never hungry league.
Oh, there is. I've never been. It's just surrounds you. It's from the time you go and have the meeting with the coaches. You come out and you got to walk past the buffet after practice. The buffet is there.
Jeez.
And then you go, okay, we're going to head to the plane, and there's more food on the plane. And then you get off the plane, and there's a meal there again for you to eat. And then you go to the rink, and there's a meal there. It's
unbelievable. You look like you could play right now.
Well, the story and I will tell this quick story that people don't know, and because I'm tall, I get away with it. But when I took the job, we were going through COVID, and I was into this mountain biking and this eating properly, and I had all my suits adjusted, and I went back to my original weight that I finished playing at, which was 220. And I chopped all my suits, and I looked great. And I took the job, and I will say that I've replaced every single clothing that I wore in the pandemic because I am 40 pounds heavier than when I was. Now I've always continued to work out 1 hour per day. It's just the fact that there's that much food around me. Yeah, so my kids really give it to me when they get the chance.
Well, you do look like you can play, and we'll get into your playing career in the next segment. But I have one more question about the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of fans think, and you get caught up in the internet, and you go, oh, it's like trading cards.
Yeah.
This guy for that guy, and it's, hey, he'd look good here. I think people miss sometimes, and you clearly don't, you miss the personal side. Their wife is here, their kids are in school, or they just bought a home, and there's more to it than just what helps your club. There's a personal side.
Yeah.
And how have you been able to deal with that side of it and know that you're affecting, you need to do your job, but you're affecting human beings as well?
Well, I'm around Larry Plow a lot, and Larry was a GM for over 16 years. And I really rely on Larry a lot to walk through that process and that. And if you ask anybody about Larry, they're going to say he's a great guy. And a lot of the guys you ask, he traded. So I'm in constant search to make sure that, you have that personal touch. One of my first trades here with the club was Derek Stepan, and his wife was pregnant. There was COVID. She couldn't travel. I had to make that call, and it was brutal. Because now he's got to leave to go to Canada. She can't get across the border. Those are the tough ones. And I believe you got to be human on those sides, because you got to feel for them. It's not just a business. At the same time, you have to make the right decision for the club. There's a balance in there that you have to have. And a lot of times you find that balance by actually reaching out to the player afterwards and just say, hey, listen, time has gone by. I'm sorry that I had to do that, and can I make it up to you, or can we have a dinner or something like that? And you can sometimes heal that that way, but you try to let them know, hey, you're human, and it's a business decision. At the same time, we've done a good job. I felt like, really trying to take care of people inside our organization since I've come here. And I think that has a lot to do with Larry Plow and his feel for people. When I give him the situation, we had a scout go through cancer, and, we tried to do everything in our power, even get our doctors to look at him, and, kept him on staff and kept him involved in the meetings and everything, and kept him involved. And he's on the other side of that now. And whether it's Phil Kessel, where we fly, him to for the birth of his first child, anything that we can do for the players, we try and do that. We've flown guys home in the COVID right before Christmas. It's a $50,000 flight. Our ownership really did a good job of taking care and made sure everybody got home for Christmas. And those are a lot of the things that go on behind the scenes that people don't know. But I feel like if we can do that behind the scenes and take care of our people, they will repay us. They will be loyal. They will fight harder for us. And I think our players know that too. And that's a hard balance to walk between business and being personal.
So, the GM job, it's obviously a tough role. How does someone like you were a tough guy defenseman. We looked up your penalty minutes before the show.
We did the math.
Throw it, Craig. What's the math?
1,443 penalty minutes in 8+ seasons in the AHL. How do you go from there?
Was it that many?
to this? And was this always your dream? How did this evolve? How did you get from there to right now?
Oh, I'll get a good story. So we finished up. I'm captain in the Providence Bruins, and it was a horrific season to go through. It just was it was all young players, and they obviously got a lot better. And I had a fulfilling season in the sense that I guided a lot of those guys, and they went on to play the NHL. But it was just like there was 15 young players, and that team went on to win the American League Championship the following year. But I was literally driving down with, my knuckles were scraped from just fighting, and my season was over and my contract was done. And I thought I was driving down 95 going home to Warwick, Rhode Island out of my final game. And I thought to myself, oh man, I've got to go sell used cars. This is going to get bad. And I came up with a foolproof plan. I said, my paycheck doesn't end until September 1st. I'm going to wait as long as I can, to get, find another job. I'm going to keep trying. And I was pretty much going to go down to the East Coast to get that. As a player, I was dropping down, and this reporter named Bob Dick called me, and he said, hey, one of your good friends, your D partner, Peter Laviolette's going to get the job in Providence. So I picked up the phone, and he didn't pick up, and I called. I said, hey, Peter, it's Army. You don't call anymore? You don't write? You're in my backyard, and you don't say hi, and I know you're here. And I said, I know you're going to be named head coach of the P Bruins. I said, I am your new assistant coach, and I will see you there on opening day. Called back like a week and a half later. She said, that works.
Get out of here.
And that's how I made the switch. And I looked around. And everybody in the American League that was assistant coach had played the NHL except me. So I never took my job for granted. I stayed there. I studied everything that I didn't know. And Peter was a great coach. Obviously, he's gone on to do some great things in the NHL. But that's how I got my foot in the door. I always saw myself coaching. I never knew that I would be a GM.
So the day-to-day competing, that is definitely ingrained. And we saw what we talked about, kind of player in jest that you were a little tougher, but we talk about the kind of team you're trying to build here. And there is an element of that. Is that a conscious thing you do when you're looking at either free agents or draft picks? Are you looking for that toughness?
Not the way that maybe sounds or like my penalty minutes indicate. There is a line you need to cross. And you have to cross that line. And I always felt like I played with these guys in juniors, and they didn't have one fight, and I didn't expect them to fight. But if you compete hard enough for your job every night on the ice, you will run into that at some point in time. You will come to where you're getting taken advantage. And that's my big thing, is that you got to be able to cross that line. And I was thinking about this the other day. There was a hit Braden Shen had in one of our playoff series. And it was a violent hit. And he had no regard for his body. He crossed a line with that hit. And, he sent a message that, and with that hit, whether you like it or not, we were here to, we were not walking out of there unless we won. And you have to have that in you if you're going to win a championship. You have to cross that line at some point in time, and disregard for your body and your health and everything else. You got to put that aside. It's about winning. And so I feel you see that sometimes with players that will drop the gloves, and not that they're fighters, but they'll have it 1 or 2 times a year where they just compete so hard they run into it. And that's a good indicator for us that they will cross that line to win a championship. I always tell the scouts when we're sitting at the table, my big thing is they're building that list, to go to the draft. I always tell them the 7th game for the organization is not won on the ice. It's won today at this table. You are picking the players that have that character that will cross that line to win a championship.
1,443 minutes, though.
A lot, yeah. I probably should have had some more. I think I got some taken away at one point in time. But, I have a unique distinction, I think, in the American League. I was the only player, the only person to be suspended as a player, as an assistant coach, and I think as a head coach. So that was
proud moments.
Yeah, that is very proud.
Yeah. Hardware for that?
No, but I did bring it up when they retired Dave Andrews, the president.
Yeah. I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, we want to get to the draft in just a second, but before we do, I just want to let y'all know to check out morefurniture.com, because we're sitting in these unreal comfortable chairs, which we all fit in, just for the record. And you can save big on the best furniture in the Valley when you head to morefurniture.com. That's morfurniture.com. Spruce up your home, spruce up your office. Do it now. Check out more great stuff. And I also want to tell you about Underdog Fantasy. One of our favorites. Petey and I love doing the drafts. We love doing the pick'ems before games, whether it's the NFL, the NHL, the NBA. Check out Underdog Fantasy. It's super easy to get started. You just go to underdogfantasy.com or download the app. Sign up with the code PHNX, and Underdog will match your first deposit up to $100. So it's a no-brainer. Let them match your deposit, and then you can play the pick'em game, do daily fantasy with your friends or with strangers, and it's a lot of fun.
I always lose,
and it's a really good way to make money. And I always beat Petey, so it's good for my
Petey does always lose.
Yeah, so will not be on Bill Armstrong's staff anytime soon, because I can't even draft the fantasy team.
But,
oh boy!
But that's daily drafting. So let's talk now about
the draft.
NHL drafting. And
I know you guys and the scouts obviously get excited about the draft. It's in Nashville this year, which makes it all the better, in my opinion. We could.
What do you think our outfits are going to look like this year?
I cannot wait.
Are we wearing the boots
right there?
Oh my God!
Yeah, the blue suit.
Any thoughts?
We already had the buckles at the dad's trip. We can't wait to see what you guys get up on stage with this year.
It's a thing now.
I love it.
It's a thing. I will tell you, when I walked into Montreal, I put that suit on in the hotel room before we left, and I thought to myself, one thing: how do I get out of this? and I walked in. It was my idea, to wear the matching suits. And I walked in, and it was just a sea of blue and red. And I thought to myself, no, this is good. When we walked into the draft, it stopped it. It literally, there was about 15,000 people, and there was about, the whole bottom of it, and it just stopped. Then everyone just went,
wow. Seriously, if I go on, we use photography services. If I go on Getty Images, I can probably find 100 photos of you guys at the draft.
Oh yeah, we rocked it. Yeah, we rocked it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the draft itself again in Nashville. So we're excited. We're actually going to be going as a pretty large crew to that one to cover it. So looking forward to that. We're gonna be setting up shop at the winery that Carter Hutton is part owner in, by the way. So
nice, good man.
Let's look at their stages of scouting. And this as well as anyone. Where's your staff right now in that process?
Our staff is advanced. If I ever thought the day that I walked in and took the job that we'd be where we are now, I'd be tickled pink. It just, we've added so many good scouts to the process. I always talk about this. We're drafting. We thought we were drafting at 1. And it was a hard one because there were so many disputes about Shane Wright, and I thought our staff was so calm about it because we had so many guys on our staff that had picked 1 before, good and bad and ugly. They were calm, and the way they deliberated, it was amazing process to go through for us. But it had to do with, we're not going to the draft table and trying to figure out things with the group. They've already figured them out. We're there to pick players, and that's what I love, that Daryl and Ryan are there along with Alan Heppel, myself, and Larry Plow. that have all gone through the process of running staff. There's a lot of experience there. The one thing that we've tried to do with the staff is really teach. So when we go to rookie camp, we're not golfing. We're locked in there. We're going through different things, whether it's pace of play with players, explaining about synergy with goaltenders. There's a constant teaching, trying to grow that staff. There was a great book I read about Phil Knight with Shoe Dog. And he talks about, how do I make my staff better? And the guy points to the hedge of the bamboo behind. He goes, last year was this style. Now it's this. It grew a whole foot in a year. And that's what you're trying to get done with your staff, is you're trying to put the most educated staff that you can possibly put on the road to draft. And, think about hockey. Hockey always change. One rule changes hockey. There's no hooking.
Mm-hmm.
It's constantly changing. So we're always trying to stay ahead of the trends. One day there was a whole bunch of teams with fighters. And then one day I woke up and there was no fighters on the team. Yeah. So you don't want to be the last to the picnic on that one.
January 23rd, 5 months out from the draft.
Yeah.
Where are your scouts in the process right now of scouting the 2023 draft prospects?
So they've had their midterm meetings now. They've identified, they've gone through it. They've put their players on the board and who they're going to follow. We've zoned in on where we're going to pick in a rough area, and now it's just about honing in to that area is where we're going to pick. So I give them guidelines. I'll say like, hey, listen, we could add a pick in this area. If we trade this guy, we could add a pick here. Be wary to pick here in the different zones of the draft. So I think for us, it's now it's decision making time. You like these guys in your area? We could pick this guy. Do you like him? Do you not? Now it's decision time in the second half of the scouting. And they've identified the players, and now it comes down to honing in them and knowing them better than you know your own family.
One of the things about that, though, because there went a trend in the NHL where teams were cutting their scouting staff, and they're going almost backwards. And we're only doing video. We're trying to save money. And you've gone the other way.
Oh, we've gone the other way.
So for you as a general manager, you cannot possibly see every player in the world, which is it's a worldwide marketplace. Right. What's that level of trust that you have in the guys that are boots on the ground going to those games? And eventually, if you're picking top three, you're going to see the player. But what's your trust level in that staff?
Well, I base a lot of the way that I work with my staff around what Doug Armstrong and how he worked with the St. Louis staff was. He asked tough questions, but he never micromanaged. And there's a difference to say, hey, listen, why are we picking this player here? Explain it. And it plants seeds within your scouts, and they either move the player or not, but you're not going in there and demanding, hey, you need to do this and that, and micromanaging them. And I think there's a difference. And I think if you have a really good, strong scouting staff, if you're just asking the right questions as a GM, they'll usually put the right list together, and they'll explain why. This is why we have this guy here. He's 5'1", and we have him in the top 10. They'll explain to you why, and that's
player.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's what you try and get at, but you can't micromanage them. They travel the world, they see more, and I've been in those shoes where they've seen it live, But we've gone the other way, like you said. We've pumped a lot of money into the scouting through analytics, through video. There's no excuses on our end about trying to see players, and even if there's a player in Russia and he's injured, you still have analytics, and we have all the services over there. We can watch every single one of his games.
Wow. We've been talking about the 2023 draft class specifically. It feels like for more than just this year. So besides, we'll get to the top group in a second, but just an overall assessment of this draft class. What, just from your point of view, what are its strengths, weaknesses, and maybe some potential surprises?
Yeah, I think there's a strong draft class up top, and that's what you look for when you're picking in that area. I think that there's some good depth in the draft, which means, from 10 on, in the first round, there's some good depth. You're going to find some good players in that. So I think it's probably a little stronger draft than last year. But it's a healthy draft, and I still think there's a few kids that are playing that are going to be better or move up the draft board. Then might be some surprises second half. Yeah.
Well, we have to ask about Connor Bedard. Obviously, we talk about him a ton.
Who?
Yeah, you got to see him at the World Junior Championship. How good is he? And also, we recently had Chris Peters on our show, and he said that there's some discussion out there that he might not be a center in this league. He might end up being a wing. Do you agree with that? So thoughts on Bedard and thoughts on his position?
Yeah, I think he's a very average player.
Yeah, don't show your hand, Bill. You're gonna fool him.
Team should really go by him. I mean, it's
skip him.
It's no surprise what he's done. He's a remarkable young man. I had a chance to meet him, and I know his coach pretty well. That coaches him in junior. Very impressed with him, just as a person. He's got that same type of drive that the Crosbys have of the world. You know, you don't worry about picking those guys because, you know, you got to remember also there's a pressure that goes with one, and not everybody can handle that pressure. We drafted a player one time, and you know, every time he came around the net, he thought he had to make the first overall play, and it affected the way he played. This kid's had that pressure since he came out of the womb, so he can deal with that. That's a great thing. But he's a special player. I think everybody saw the, you know, when you make that play and you beat the Slovaks. I mean, everybody could see that type of special that he has. You know, and that's not a secret that's out there. But there's also guys pushing from behind him that are pretty darn good players too, and you got to make sure that you keep them in mind. You know, there's a projection here at the end. It's you know, that there's some good players coming from behind him, so it'll be an interesting process to see how the second half goes. But he is someone that you know, that has shown that he could be special, and we'll see what the guys behind him are pushing.
Let's talk about two of those guys. Are Adam Fantilli and Leo Carlsson head and shoulders above the rest of the group?
They could be. They could be.
But that brings a question to me, because you've been at the draft table many times. This is not your first time doing this.
Yep.
When you get, and we understand that the hype of the top 10 or even the first round, but when you're picking from the second to the seventh round, are you starting to look at, gosh, we really need to fill that third line right wing spot with a gritty guy, or we're looking for a third pair defenseman? Are you looking for spots that fill your roster, or are you looking for the best athlete and the best hockey player at that?
Well, when you're picking up high, you're just taking the best player. We've always had that thought process. You can't get into, he's a D. It's the best player. As you move farther on through the draft, or when you're in the draft and you're looking at your board and saying, okay, we drafted 3D in the first 3 rounds, you're not as excited about drafting another D. So you have to watch the board. But it's really about the best player for the most part. We like to get in there and I guess football's probably a little bit different because they're drafting sometimes for position, but we're drafting majority of times off best player.
And we're talking about best players, and our producer's actually from Buffalo, New York. So to him, the best player in hockey right now is a player you helped in the draft process with, Tage Thompson.
Yeah.
And some people at the time were not sure what Tage Thompson was or was going to be. He has become, honestly, he's an elite goal scorer in this league right now. He is absolutely fun to watch. What was the process of drafting a player like that? Because there's going to be the second guessing after, you took him too high, or what was it like drafting a kid like Tage Thompson?
In St. Louis, we had picked in that range somewhere between 20 to 26 the majority of time that I was there. Yeah. So we were really comfortable in that spot because we had gotten Oshie before there, we'd gotten Prawn. We had high expectations of what we wanted out of there. So the way that we would do the board was, if we're picking in the first round, we wanted to get somebody that was a top 2 line player, top 4 defenseman, or number 1 goaltender. We didn't want to take a third or fourth line player, 5-6 defenseman at that point in the draft. So when Tage was coming down, we were like, okay, he's the last guy on the board that we have in with that quality of hockey player that could reach the first line. And so we were like, okay, well, we got to trade up. And I don't think Doug Armstrong was too crazy about moving a third to move 2 spots up. But he was literally the last guy on the board that we loved. So for us, it was an easy one. You're so into the draft, you know what the areas around. You don't really worry about people second guessing you because that's what's there at the time. And we had such experience at the table and picking in that area. We're pretty zoned into that cluster of players, and we felt like he was the last, and it turns out he was.
But then you get a question to a scout. Then is you're picking that player, and you kind of get married to the player a little bit. You watch his development. You're in. What was the emotion like when you have to trade a player like that, or you see him get traded and you go, like risk reward, or you feel sad, or you're okay because you had the parade?
Well, it's there's 2 sides to that. As a player getting traded out of the organization, it's their first love. They're crushed. Yeah. They're literally crushed. And for us on the other side, do you give him Chychrun? Do you give him Tage Thompson? It's so close. You know what to say, and that's the ask was for O'Reilly. We won, so it was the right trade for the Blues, hands down. And that we'd do it. I believe Doug would do it again, just because you get into that spot, you gotta win. You gotta win, and it was a great trade. We always talking about sometimes if you're beating everybody on the trades, people stop trading with you eventually because they're like, "Ooh, we're going to get waxed on this one." It's always nice, I think, when a trade does work out, where you have success, but also they have success too, and that's what a lot of good trades look like. And it worked out for them on the other side of it. Took them a long time. It was a slow burn for them. With bigger guys, it takes longer to develop. With Connor Geekies of the world and the Lamoureux, they're slower burns. They're not coming right away in playing. It's going to take them some time to get going, and it's just when you're bigger, it just takes a longer time.
One more question on the draft, and I don't want to be Debbie Downer for all of our viewers here. But if you're not picking in the top 3, I mean, you can tell me who you take if you want at 4, 5, and 6. If you want to lay that out right now,
I could.
We'll allow you that. But are you confident that group of players, 4, 5, 6, 7, those players are still you're going to get an impact player in that area of the draft?
We're gonna have to find a way. We're gonna find a way. Listen, if you there's no guarantees that if you finish dead last, you're gonna pick at 1. And our whole theory is this. We're gonna cut you with 1,000 different blades, which means when you come to play the Coyotes in 5 years from now, we're gonna have extra picks that are gonna put really good players on the 3rd and 4th line. And we're going to stack our team with a ton of depth and a ton of talent because we have more picks than anybody in the NHL. And that has been the theory, and that's what we've stuck to. So, we just can't rest assured that, hey, just because you finish in a certain area, you're going to pick one. It's a lottery. You don't know what's going to happen. But you have to be prepared for your best case scenario and also your worst case scenario. And we would expect our scouts to find a good player there.
The follow-up to that, Bill, and the process is get the player, scout the player, draft the player, then it's develop the players. So where is your focus on development? You've been very familiar with the American League. How important is that league and getting the player from the draft table to playing for this club?
That was the second part that we did. We worked on the scouting when I first came in, and then we did the board, and we figured out, listen, we're going to draft more players than any other NHL team in the next 5 years. We've got to put the best development crew together. Lee Stepniak has headed that up for us, and I like players that have kind of touched all levels. They've played somewhere in college or junior. They've played in the American League. They've played in the NHL. And Lee had been with our group for a while, and he had studied the analytics, and he kind of had like a good foot in the door, and he had done some development for us. So he kind of heads it up for us. But we also have Jeff Shantz and Curtis Foster and Nathaniel Brooks that all have a part in our development. And we have a big development staff, but that development staff is there for our players. 24/7, from nutrition, we test the blood, the skills when they're struggling. We have a mental performance. It's probably a little bit almost on that line of overkill to the player because they are getting a lot of information, but we want to make sure that our players are taken care of. If they're injured, we're getting them, flown into here, get them looked at by our doctors and get a plan where sometimes we send our guys in to go skate with them to get them ready to come back to play. Or if they're struggling, we find ways to walk that line where we're going through the video, but we're not stepping on the coach's toes because they have to earn the ice time through the coach that they're playing with. And we have to make sure we don't cross that line. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we are one of the best development teams in the National Hockey League.
Every bit as critical a component as the scouting. Yeah, and
it
often gets overlooked.
Yeah, it is. And keeping that player hungry, keeping him involved, keeping him growing. And, our development team, if they're doing a great job, you're going to see great growth out of our players at a steady rate.
Well, we have just a few more questions for you. We're going to venture into the fun question category.
Right. It's about time we started having some fun on this show.
But really quickly, before we do, I just want to let everyone know there's 3 games left at home until the All-Star break. So if you want to go see the Coyotes in person at Mullet Arena, check out Game Time to get your tickets. You can save up to 60% when you buy them last minute. You can also get your parking pass on Game Time, all of it. It's all there. And the longer you can stomach waiting, the cheaper the tickets will be. I promise you, it's great for procrastinators, let me say. And the best way to support us is by buying your tickets through the link below in our description. So check out Game Time. I've had great experience with it, and you absolutely can too. And also, while you're looking in the links in our description, become a diehard if you're not already. Go phnx.com/diehard. Become a diehard. You get access to Craig's prospect report, the mailbag, all the diehard only content, as well as discounts in the locker, discounts on events, access to our Discord. A lot of great perks to becoming a diehard. So become a diehard today. All right.
Now we're moving to the lighter side.
Yep.
The lighter side.
You didn't bring the dogs in, so
No, and I'm on dog watch this week.
We
My wife.
need to hear about this. Let's start with that story that you told us before we went on the air.
Well, last night my wife obviously went on a trip, so I was responsible for the dogs. And normally they sleep at the foot of the bed, in good order. They took turns abusing me last night, getting up, wanting to play. They wanted to eat. They wanted to go to the bathroom outside. They wanted to do it all last night. So I got abused like a substitute teacher in an 8th grade class.
So you said dogs. The last time.
Yep. Yeah.
We've met one.
Yeah, we have met one. We had Stanley on the show a while back, about a year ago. Since then, you've added to the pack.
Well, we're at that point in our life where my wife and I, the kids have left. And, and as a GM, I talk all day from the moment I leave the house to the time that I get back, I talk. So, when I come home, sometimes I'm not that talkative. So I think we had to get the extra dog so she had somebody to talk to.
Oh man!
I've heard you have a dog voice though when you talk to the dogs. Somebody told me that.
I think everybody in this room would have to say that you're not the same 100%. Way as you are right now. When you go home. So the dogs. No matter if you win, you lose, you make a bad trade, they still love you. So there's something great about having a dog in your life and making it family and we're dog people, so it truly is. I don't bring him to work because Stan's uncontrollable. He's just So I tried that once. That just lasted one time. Yeah.
The second one's name is Bobby.
Bobby, yeah.
Named after?
Yeah. Well, Bobby Orr, of course.
Okay. Yeah, there it is.
I love the hockey.
It's always hockey. Yeah.
Of course. All right. Well, we got to ask you about this. There, obviously, so we're in the age of social media, and a lot of public figures like yourself do have Twitter accounts. I don't know if you do or not, but we do know that there is someone out there kind of using your face and name, although they don't claim to be you necessarily. Yeah. Bill Armstrong's burner account at Bill Armstrong GM. This is a screenshot. Have you seen this Twitter account, and what do you think of it?
He is incredible. He is up on everything. I don't know who it is. I have a feeling that maybe they went to my hockey school or something back in the day, or they worked for me or something. But it's really a unique Twitter account. He is entertaining. I will say that he or she is entertaining.
We thought it might be you living through an alternate personality just to get some of those thoughts out of your head.
Yeah, didn't some GM lose his job for a second Twitter account or something? Yeah. But I view Twitter. I'm a viewer, but I don't ever and I've never written anything, or maybe one time I did, but. I view it, and it is pretty comical. He does. I think our fans like him. He's pretty entertaining. And
I know his identity, but I'm not going to give it up.
Do you?
Do you really?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He sticks up for the Yotes. He brings it pretty good. And one thing I love about him is, it's consistency. You know what I mean? Like. He's always on it 24/7. He never sleeps.
He is
active. Yeah.
Well, that's what you see about the fan base here. The Coyote fan base is passionate.
They're tough.
It's okay to be frustrated.
No, they're tough. They bark back at those other fans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we don't hear that for sure.
Yeah.
At a fight in the room there today. By the way, this team has not, for all those listening right now, this team has not lost to the Toronto Maple Leafs in the calendar year of 2022. That is 4-0. There it is. There's the banner.
Yeah, we created a banner.
So sorry. I have to throw that out there once in a while. Yeah. Bill, you've been a journeyman player. Yeah. You were a scout, put on thousands and thousands of miles in cars and planes and boats and trains. We do a segment on the show called Tales from the Road.
Okay.
And it's a fun story of people might not understand. We talked about shoe checks for nobody knew what that was. Can you give us a rated PG version of a Bill Armstrong Tales from the Road?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll try and put this in. So, as a GM, as a scout, there's a lot of things coming at you. Time is the most valuable thing. Everything is around the game starts at 7. It's everything in your life revolves around game starts at 7. You gotta have, and then you just work backwards. And sometimes people don't understand. Like there's you're changing flights. So I was going into Quebec City at the time, and I'd taken a photocopy of my license because I had to send it to the insurance company. We're switching insurance companies. For some reason, I had left it on the photocopier at home. So, and I had battled to get to Quebec City. There was all these storms coming in and out, and I had to see this guy. I just had to see this player up in Shawinigan. And you got to fly into Quebec City to get there, and you have to drive a 2-hour drive through this national park. And it was the last viewing of this player that I could get because I was headed to Europe or whatever. So it was a must see. So I was not giving up, and I was changing flights. I was battling with all I had was my passport, So I get off the plane and I'm like, I cannot believe I made it here. And the guy's like, you're not going anywhere. I'm like, and I keep checking. The Quebec League hasn't canceled the game. I'm like, no. Give me the biggest car you have in that parking lot. We're going to make it up there. And he's like, yeah, I got this huge, massive Durango or what it was. It's got snow tires and chains. I go, perfect. We're taking that. And he goes, can I see your license?
Oh, no.
And it's like, 3 hours from game time now. And I'm like, I don't have it. He goes, I can't rent it to you. I'm like, I have switched flights. I've done everything. Give me the car. Give me the car. And he won't. He's doing his job. He's like, I'm like, listen, I'm a lawyer. You have the copy. I know you do at Enterprise somewhere. I'm an elite member. And he wouldn't give me the car. So I just suddenly remembered that I'd be in the scouts room. And this one scout said, I'm going to that game.
No.
And so I dialed him quickly. He goes, yeah, I'm like 5 minutes from the airport. I'll pick you up. So he ended up picking me up, and we get to the front of the park, and it's closed. They have the barricades across the park. God. And I'm like, this is like, I cannot believe where I am, I battled all day. Now time is ticking. He goes, I think I know a way around this.
No.
So we literally go to farm fields, like literally driving across people's property, scooting back through stores. Like this goes on for 2 hours. And it comes down to, it was almost like out of a movie. At the bottom of the hill, you can see Shawinigan. It was Chicoutimi. And when there was all these intersecting, things down this like mountain pass, it felt like, and we started going down it, and it was all ice. We went through 3 different consecutive stop signs and couldn't stop, like a toboggan ride. And I'm like, now we're facing death. I'm like this. And literally when we got to the end of it, we almost turned right and we were into the rink, and he looked at me and I was like, he's like, no parking. And it was all ice. So we kind of navigated up to the doors, and we said, and he spoke French, and the guy, park here, go into the game. The game starts. And literally it's a brawl where the brawl starts, and Patrick Roy's son was fighting. It went on it was like Patrick Roy's son was a goaltender. He fought like 3 people. They kept sending the tough guy off the bench, to fight. And I got the viewing at the end of the day after all the fights and everything. And I didn't like the guy.
No.
Almost died about 3 to 4 times.
Somebody was sending you a message, by the way.
Just battled with first and second and third efforts to get to that game. And I hated that guy.
So video scouting may be the way to go.
Would have been. But so that is a true story. And when I see that scout, we just still look at each other and just
It's too bad they don't play hockey, like more hockey. And what they do, I know, in Florida and Texas. And that'd be great.
Well, they did have a team in Palm Springs the other day. I went to the game, and I thought to myself, this is a scout dream. This is a scout dream.
There.
Oh, that's easy scouting.
Oh my God, that's
easy.
That's an unreal story.
Yeah.
All right, we have one last question
Yeah.
for you before we let you go.
Yeah.
We mentioned it to you before the show, but on this show, especially during the summer, and I know it's only Monday, but we do a segment called Weekend Binge. So for every Friday, we say, what are we watching this weekend?
Yeah.
And, we chatted with you a little bit before we went live. Maybe you don't have a ton of time to watch anything, but do you ever get to watch TV? And if so, what do you watch?
Well, my wife is if you met her, you'd think she's just, the greatest woman in the world. And she's, how she lives her life, and she's all about joy and about being good to people and just living the right thing. And she's got some shows that's just turned me off TV. I don't know how she watched like The Bachelor.
Oh no, Leah!
Hey, I love The Bachelor.
Oh no,
My 90-Day Fiance. So I've got to the point where I've stopped watching TV. And she's gonna kill me for saying that because she's Love Island.
Talks about Love Island every week. Leah does.
Yeah, Leah and your wife.
Unfortunately, I don't know. I just can't take it.
Bill watching Love Island
UK, episode 63.
I'm all about purpose in my life, so I usually go right back to watching hockey, which takes me back to the goodness of the world and what can help the world to be a better place, but to watch more hockey. So that's what I do. But Vikings off Netflix is pretty darn good, I will say.
All right. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I do want to say this because we've all been around this organization for a really long time. And I know we're coming to the end of our time with you, Bill. Yeah. Fans here have been full of hope for 25 years.
Yeah.
And they've been here, they've seen it, they've been through all these different things. I'd have to say, sitting here in this seat, I'm convinced in that. Like, I believe in what you're doing. I believe in what the organization is doing right now. And I know I want people on the other end of this to go, it's painful right now. It's really, really, really hard. But just hang in there. Yeah. Because if you do the process like you did, the scouting, the developing, the coaching, it's going to get there. Just hang in there and believe in it. So we believe in you and the job you're doing. So thanks for what you're doing for this team.
I appreciate that. I would just say, this is like where we are right now. We're a quarter of the way through. We're in the middle of the sea in a boat with limited food, and there's no wind. And it feels like you're never going to get there. It's impossible to get there. But you're actually closer than you really think. And where we've made all these small little wins, little victories of the Logan Coolies of the world, the Geekies we've added, the Mosers we've added, the Veg Malkas, the McBains, when we've been doing that in a short period of time, and those are our little wins and our little victories. We've got to continue to build off that and just continue to draft well. I've said this from the moment I've come in. Just get one good player, stack them on another good player, stack them on another good player. And soon enough, you'll start winning. You'll get into the playoffs, and the fans will come to the building, and we'll be an elite franchise. And it all has to do with just getting good players, getting the right talent in.
And I'm going to have one more.
Oh, boy.
Sorry. I know everyone wants to go home and eat. Talking. I'm sorry. Yeah. Who is the best equipment manager in the NHL, and why is it Stan Wilson?
Stan's a legend. First of all, I like working with him. He's really a calm guy. If there's ever a mistake on my part or his part, it's usually works out real quickly. Nobody's blaming anybody. He's a man of purpose. It's just all about getting things done properly. And I think if you're good at being an equipment manager, you have to care about other people. Your biggest thing when you wake up in the morning is, how can I make that person better? And that's really the sign. And that's what he does. If you have an issue, he will work to learn it, to improve it, and make you a better player. And that's what you look for in those guys. And he has a whole lot of that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Bill, thank you so much for coming out here.
Thank you. I thought you guys were going to beat me up. This is pretty easy. This turned out to be pretty good. Now, when do I get the free furniture?
That's more furniture. MOR.
A big house, no furniture in it. We're going to need furniture.
Okay, well, we'll hook you up. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. And I know, the Coyotes fans were so appreciative, and we're really excited about what you're building and looking forward to hopefully getting you back on the show again soon. I know you've been on a few times digitally, so it's really great to get you.
Hour 2 is when we kill you, by the way.
All right, It's when I leave that they get me.
Exactly. But thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to PHNX Sports on YouTube. Subscribe, leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts as well. Follow PHNX Sports across all social platforms, and follow Us on Twitter at PHNX_Coyotes will be live tomorrow night for the post-game show. And until then, enjoy the rest of your Monday, everybody.